Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. To understand the extent of the situation, I will have to provide you guys with a lot of context, and for that, you all will have to revisit my childhood with me. It all started with my dad and mom meeting. They met in high school and were the typical rich, spoiled party kids who made stupid decisions. Honestly, by the way my dad describes it, I feel like if it weren't for his very strict parents, who would have knocked up my mom in high school itself, but regardless, it was bound to happen sometime, and it did in college. Honestly, looking at them, it's shocking to even know that they were in college at a certain point in their lives, but regardless, it didn't last long. And soon enough, my mom fell pregnant and gave birth to my elder sister, Miranda, who became the Satan in my life. So, my parents ran away soon after giving birth to Miranda because obviously my grandparents were not at all happy with how things had turned out. So, they made them follow their own rules if they wanted to live under their roof, and of course, they couldn't live with that. My dad stole a lot of money and ran away with Miranda and my mom. The cops were called on him soon after because my grandparents weren't going to have any of his BS. They immediately disowned him and gave up on any responsibility which they were going to take from Miranda. Well, if this is horrible enough for you all, just wait for it because things are only going to get worse from here. So, my dad was put in jail for theft for a couple of months, and my mom fell pregnant once again. By this point, Miranda was around 2 years old, and apparently, according to my dad himself, he was ecstatic to find this news out while he had absolutely no means to take care of me, let alone his existing family. Needless to say, though, my parents didn't give up on me, and I was born soon after. Now, my parents were living in a rundown apartment while my parents both had very unstable jobs and were just falling deeper into their pits of addictions. Their life was very steadily going downhill, and at this point, like I said, almost everyone, including my grandparents, had given up on our family. And do I need to say this again? This only worsened once again, and this time going to embark on the beginning of a traumatizing childhood. So it was around Christmas, from what I could remember. I was, what, around 5 or 6 something? My memory is blurry on that part, don't mind me. But I still vividly remember how my parents were arguing more than usual that day over a man named Jeff. My dad would proceed to call my mom all sorts of names and associate it to Jeff, while my mom wasn't a saint either. She made sure to yell at him back. However, regardless of all these arguments, we had a small, warm Christmas meal and went to bed quietly. Being used to this, such a lifestyle had become a new norm to me, and so I just chalked it up to a bad day and thought nothing of it. But boy, who would have told me that this was the last time I'd see my mom? So I woke up the next day to my dad and his friends going crazy. He had a letter in his hand, and I soon found out that my mom had left us. I wasn't sure of the reason, but I did soon. That too, in the worst possible way. It started from Miranda, who began making fun of me because I didn't belong to my dad. I still remember the first time. It was heartbreaking. Soon enough, though, this torment was followed by my dad, and it just became a trend. It didn't take me long to realize that I was the reason why Mom left me. I was the result of her affair with Jeff. Unfortunately, though, little me couldn't do anything and had to suffer through this torment all my life. I was made to do all the household chores as my dad, who now got with another woman and had stepchildren, started treating me as an outsider. I got out of the house the moment I turned 18. The harassment didn't stop there because now that my dad lost a free maid, he was mad and would have all his stepchildren along with Miranda stalk me relentlessly until one day she tracked down my house and broke in, causing me to call the cops on her and have her arrested along with getting a restraining order. Ever since then, they all have been quieter than ever. Around this dark time, I met Ryan, who I fell for, and we began dating. He knew about everything that had been happening with me because he was the one who held me during all those nights I would cry myself to sleep over everything that happened. We have been dating ever since, and honestly, till this point, I would have said that there was nothing else in this world that would break us apart. I was so happy and so proud of our relationship. I thought Ryan was the family that I needed and one that I never had. Hell, we even celebrated our 10-year anniversary last month, so how could he just. It all started last week. Well, I'm not going to lie, I have been ignoring all the red flags since the past couple of months, like hiding his phone, being too protective over it, taking it to the bathroom excessively, etc. I just chalked it up to him wanting space, and that was that. It was only last week that all the alarm bells started ringing as I found a lipstick at my place that I never used. I knew exactly because it has an ingredient in it which I am horribly allergic to. Well, regardless, I try to get my mind off of this because now I'm panicking like crazy. From the very night I found it until the next morning while I'm at work, restless over everything. I know I need to talk to Ryan, who'd be at home working. So I decided to leave work a whopping 5 hours earlier than I should. God bless my amazing boss for letting me go, and drive back home with horrible anxiety in my stomach. I guess, now that I think about it, it was just my gut feeling screaming over it all. Well, I returned home trying to reassure myself that everything will be okay and open the door with the keys that I have, and there I have it. Miranda on top of my boyfriend of 10 years having the time of her life. She gets up immediately, more like gets pushed off by Ryan, with a smirk on her lips, and it is only Ryan who is scrambling to get his words together. My eyes immediately start tearing up, and all I can get out is, why? Before leaving the apartment, slamming the door shut, and running to my car as I start to drive. I knew where I was driving. I had to because otherwise I would make terrible decisions. I get myself to a friend's house and cry myself into a word vomit as I tell her everything that happened. She held me like a little baby for hours, and I don't think I will ever be able to express my gratitude towards her enough. My phone began blowing up ever since, and honestly, it wouldn't be shocking if it was just Ryan, but the fact that it's everyone, including Ryan's family, Ryan himself, and Miranda, along with my dad, blowing up my phone and telling me all sorts of conflicting things, is what makes the whole situation so conflicting. One thing I have made clear to Ryan is that I will be running to the lawyers, who I have already made an appointment to, so that I could talk to them about the violation of the restraining order by stepping on my property. And I will make sure to let them know about how it's him who has called her over, knowing fully well about the restraining order. He's been begging up and down for me to reconsider, and although I'm leaning towards my decision, I can't help but question myself. AITA? What should I do here? Hi, everyone. I did end up going to the lawyers who had previously helped me get the restraining order against Miranda. They informed me that I had a pretty strong case since she already has a record for things like breaking in and stealing, but first I was told that I would need to file for something known as a civil contempt action. Honestly, the legalities are too much, and sometimes I just can't help but wish that Ryan cheated on me with someone who wasn't Miranda, and that is actually the part which hurts me the most, too. Regardless, I know I need to keep my chin up high and face the situation. There's also a second part of this update, which is honestly something I myself am processing because it really is a lot. My grandparents from my dad's side actually reached out to me through an email, which I assume was written by someone else. They told me that they needed to speak to me over important matters and that they'd love to have me over for a cup of tea. I have been considering their offer because it seems both tempting and a good opportunity to bond over. Any suggestions? Here's an update. The court order is still in progress and processing everything. I ended up meeting my grandparents today, and honestly, there's so much that we spoke about that it feels like every missing piece of puzzle just fit in finally. So, well, to put it in short, my grandparents have been working on their will. They have gotten back into contact with my dad a couple of years after I had moved out, and it didn't take too long to differentiate between what actually happened to me in comparison to the lie that my dad tried to put into their head, trying to make me the evil person. They were hesitant to reach out to me all along, though, and just knew they wanted to do something for me. So they decided to put most of their assets under my name and next to nothing for Miranda. This annoyed my dad and his family to another level, causing them to formulate this plan to break me. Well, honestly, I would be lying if I said I wasn't broken, but at the end, it still feels like the victory is in my hands. As for my grandparents, we chatted some more, and honestly, looking at them, I was genuinely left wondering how my dad turned out the way he did when my grandparents are such strong and wise people. Regardless, I hope I can keep in contact with them even after this. Hi, everyone. Here's my final update. It's been a couple of months since everything went down, and I'm happy to announce that Miranda was put into jail once again and is facing a hefty fine. All thanks to my amazing lawyers and also grandparents who paid for the entire deal. As for Ryan, he's still attempting to talk to me, even more now that he found out about my inheritance. His life has turned into a mess now, and quite literally, no one talks to him. Miranda truly did a number on him. Hell, so much so that even his family, who was bashing me previously, came out to apologize. But of course, if apologies could fix everything, my heart would be mended by now. Thankfully, though, it slowly is under the process. I have amazing friends who are nothing less than a family to me, and also this amazing community. Thanks, guys. NTA, go to the lawyers ASAP. You don't want to wait on a situation like this any longer because the more you wait, the more likely Miranda is going to attempt to find you and the more likely someone is going to try to persuade you to change your mind. NTA, Ryan and Miranda both deserve each other for being horrible, senseless human beings. Good for you for having them both cut off your life. I hope only good things come through your way now onwards. Recently, my girlfriend, 29 female, and I, 31 male, went out to the East Coast to visit her parents. We've been dating for almost a year, and things have gotten serious, and they wanted to meet me. She and I come from somewhat different worlds. I grew up hunting and fishing in the rural northern Midwest, while she comes from a well to do New England family. But we met in the city where our adult lives and careers have both led us. Anyway, recently, like I said, we both traveled to the East Coast to visit her parents. I first met them at their home and it went well, but we were to meet for dinner at a casual but nice seafood restaurant on the Atlantic seaboard just a couple of hours later. I felt a little intimidated, but I wore a nice outfit to dinner, and her parents seemed to like me and we got along well. Her parents first ordered us some raw oysters and paired a nice glass of white wine to go with it for all of us. Raw oysters aren't my thing, but I ate them to be polite and drank the wine. But when it came time to order our entrees, I had settled on a fried seafood platter. I had already looked at what was on tap, and when the server asked what I had wanted to drink, with that, I ordered a tall Coors Light. There were a ton of options on tap, and maybe I should have been a little more adventurous, but it had been a long day, and I just wanted something wet and cold that wouldn't challenge my taste buds. The dinner went just fine, but afterward, when we were alone, my girlfriend asked me why I had ordered a Coors Light out of every single thing on the menu. I told her that I just didn't feel like having anything else, and she said that I had embarrassed her in front of her parents, that they had taken us out and that I'd ordered the one redneck beer that they had in reserve just in case a redneck showed up. I think that she was being mean, but maybe I didn't really read the room. NTA, outside of your terrible taste in beer, people can order whatever they want at a restaurant. I would say the only time some restraint is required is if the item is expensive and you're not paying for it. But we know Coors Light isn't expensive. Anyone who judges you, and I mean actually judges you, not lightheartedly poking fun at your choice in beer, for that is definitely TA. It sounds like your girlfriend was nervous. Either that or she has some real issues with image. I think it's worth a more in depth talk about why your choice of beer was really so important. And TA, if it's on the menu at this place, it's appropriate at this place. She's acting like you threw out shrimp peels on the floor and cracked this Coors Light can on your head when you were done and threw it over her father's shoulder and said 2 points. If she has acted in any other way different, being around her parents, or made more comments about this, you might want to take serious thought about this. My daughter recently came back from college and my sister joined us all for dinner. We all went to the Cheesecake Factory and everyone thoroughly enjoyed themselves. We all got full regular entrees, no salad, all enjoyed the bread and even got dessert too. Just to paint the picture, it was a thorough meal. When we get home, my sister goes into the fridge and pulls out a rack of brownies that she baked and then this ice cream too. My wife and I are like, hey, Rachel, not her real name, thank you for the brownies, but we're good. My daughter is also like, hey, I'll have some tomorrow, Aunt Rachel, but I am stuffed for today. Rachel then is like, okay, and gets a big bowl for herself and some ice cream and then keeps asking my daughter to have a spoonful. My daughter is like, no, really, I'm good. Then Rachel is like, oh, did your parents say you can't have any? She's like, hey, Aunt Rachel, no, I just don't want to eat so late. Plus, I am full. It was getting weird. I could tell my daughter was uncomfortable. I was like, Rachel, thank you so much for the brownies, but we don't like to eat so late. This is when it got weirder. Like, I am guessing Rachel took it as all of us ganging up on her. Like, I could see on her forehead it was getting sweaty. And she's like, it's toxic. You taught your teenage daughter diet culture just so she could look good for men and fit into white beauty standards. I got really annoyed by this. And I was like, Rachel, we encouraged our daughter to lose weight so she would be healthy. We have a family history of diabetes, and there is a reason why you have diabetes and I don't, and why my daughter won't either. And after this, it just got really bad. She starts crying like crazy and says she was just standing up for young women. She ends up leaving shortly after. My wife tells me I was being too harsh. My daughter says that she is sad that Aunt Rachel was crying because she knows she wants the best. I feel like it's a really weird place. My sister doesn't have a family of her own, and she really wants someone whom she can mentor like a child too. And we have had tons of aunt niece days, but I am really questioning her judgment these days. She does work in education policy and helped my daughter out a ton when it came to colleges. But for me, I feel like Rachel wants my daughter to be like her, and in a ways be fat too, and that's why I said in the title, undo my daughter's weight loss. If someone is repeatedly pressuring someone else to let something they don't want into their body, that person is always the a-hole. Penis, drugs, brownies, gin, doesn't matter. If you say you don't want it in your body, that should be the end of the conversation. You could have been nicer, maybe, but TBH, if someone told me in front of my teenage daughter that I was toxically grooming her for men's use, I wouldn't be polite either. NTA, because your sister was wildly out of line and assuming that your daughter is in fact healthy and you aren't hassling her into unhealthy or unhappy weight issues. If you are, then ESH, obviously. NTA, coming from a pretty fat person, your sister is toxic. Your daughter said no multiple times. Trying to give somebody a binge eating disorder is just as bad as anorexia. Also, your daughter had dessert. It's not out of norms to not have a second dessert immediately after, and that is not a slight to your sister who took it that way. Also, being fat doesn't mean you get to try and get others to be unhealthy. Being unhealthy here, being the not handling their diabetes, not being fat by itself. It's not like you are being overly restrictive of your daughter because you took her to the Cheesecake Factory in the first place. It sounds like you are teaching your daughter good habits that will help her at any size and is focused on health, diabetes risks, not appearance.